She gave 8 years to a marriage built on lies, and built a company behind the man who betrayed her. But when his just a colleague wore her robe and sat in her seat, she didn't scream. She got up, walked out, and came back with contracts, evidence, and the board in her pocket. 5 years into our marriage, everything looked perfect from the outside. People loved to talk about Adrian Wu, the sharp, charismatic CEO of Wu Media, and his equally brilliant wife, Leah Su, who had supposedly stepped down from her own rising consultancy firm just to help build her husband's empire. The press loved to paint us as the power couple of the decade. Wu Media wouldn't be what it is without both of them, one profile gushed. I used to believe that too, until the cracks began to show. It wasn't a dramatic shift, not at first. Adrian still kissed my cheek before leaving for work, still complimented my dresses before events, still remembered to send flowers to my parents on holidays. But it was the little things. His phone never used to be face down on the table. He never used to smile at his screen in the middle of dinner. And I never used to feel like a stranger walking into our own office building. I kept quiet. Not because I was afraid, but because watching silently is what I do best. A decade in strategy consulting taught me, observe first, strike after. Besides, Wu Media was still operating smoothly under our leadership. I handled long-term partnerships and organizational infrastructure. Adrian dealt with branding and growth. We were a well-oiled machine. At least that's what I told myself. Then came the charity gala. It was a Thursday night held at one of the most exclusive rooftop venues in Shanghai. The entire upper echelon of media, tech, and venture capital was there. I arrived early as always in a navy satin gown with clean lines and a deep back. My hair was twisted up into a sculpted knot. Vivian, my assistant and longtime right hand, had already laid out the PR agenda and talking points. "Let me guess," she murmured as we walked in, "Mr. Wu will make a late entrance again?" "He says it's charming," I replied dryly. She rolled her eyes. "You should get a new publicist. You're the one holding the company together." I smiled. Adrian has his charm. I have the foundation. And for a moment I believed what I said. That was before I saw her. It happened about 30 minutes into the event. I was speaking with a veteran investor when Adrian entered, flanked by a small group of junior staff. I saw him before I heard him, that familiar stride, the confident nods, the perfect timing. My eyes shifted to the woman beside him. She couldn't have been older than 25. Pale pink dress, delicate heels, long black hair tucked behind one ear. She was pretty, not threateningly so, but enough to be noticed. She walked just a bit behind Adrian, laughing when he laughed, pausing when he paused. I could tell she was trying to match his rhythm like she'd studied him. I turned back to the conversation in front of me. But I didn't stop watching. They moved through the crowd together. She stuck close to him like a well-trained intern, eager, alert, utterly devoted. And when Adrian finally approached me, her smile brightened as though she had been waiting for this introduction. "Leah," Adrian said, placing a hand lightly on my back, "come meet Jasmin Tang, one of our rising stars in the production team. She's sharp as a whip." I turned to face her fully for the first time. Jasmin extended her hand with just the right mix of enthusiasm and deference. "It's such an honor, VP Su. I've admired you for years." "Call me Leah," I said, taking her hand with a polite smile. "We're all colleagues here." Her eyes widened. "You're even more elegant in person than the company portraits." I smiled faintly. Flattery is a good strategy. Especially in this building. Adrian chuckled, clearly pleased by her charm. "She's only been with us 9 months but already producing pitches with our senior team." 9 months? Asked, my tone light. "That's impressive." Jasmin blushed. "A textbook performance. I'm just lucky to have great mentors." I glanced sideways at Adrian. "I'm sure." There was an awkward pause. Then Jasmin excused herself to get a drink, leaving the two of us alone. "She's just a colleague," Adrian said casually before I'd said a word. I arched an eyebrow. "I didn't ask." He sipped his whiskey, eyes scanning the room. "You didn't have to." I let that sit between us for a moment. Then I tilted my head. "She's young. Hope she knows not to overstep." Adrian's smile was unreadable. "She knows her place." "Does she?" I asked coolly. He didn't answer. Later that evening I found myself alone near the terrace, speaking with one of our legal advisors when I caught sight of Jasmin again. She stood in a corner, surrounded by two junior editors, laughing animatedly. Her glass was full. Her posture was open. She looked like she belonged. Then Adrian walked up behind her. She turned before he even touched her. Like she'd felt him coming. Their smiles matched. The editor beside her said something and the group laughed. Jasmin reached out to lightly touch Adrian's arm. My legal advisor was still speaking, but my attention was split now, finely tuned to that small wordless moment. They weren't lovers. Not yet. But she was circling and he wasn't stopping her. I waited. The night wore on. Eventually, Adrian came over to say he'd be taking some of the team out for drinks. I nodded, not asking who. He leaned in to kiss my cheek. I turned just slightly. His lips missed by half an inch. He smiled like he hadn't noticed. But I had. From the floor-to-ceiling windows of the ballroom, I watched them leave together. Adrian flanked by a few staff and Jasmin walking just a step behind him. She paused before stepping into the company car, glancing over her shoulder. Right at me. There was no innocence in her expression. No deference. No apology. Just a subtle, almost imperceptible smirk. Vivian appeared beside me holding a coat. Want me to book a car? Not yet, I murmured. Then I reached for my phone and sent her a single message. Find out everything you can about Jasmin Tang. Quietly. Vivian glanced at me then nodded. You got it. As we stepped out into the night air, I didn't feel rage. Not sadness either. Just a quiet, burning clarity. I'd seen this playbook before. From men who thought they were clever and girls who thought they were special. Let her play. Let him lie. The only mistake they made was underestimating me. The file Vivian handed me was thinner than I expected. Only took me a weekend, she said, sliding it onto my desk. Jasmin Tang's profile isn't exactly complicated. I didn't look up. I was sipping my coffee, eyes scanning the front page. She has no graduate degree. Barely 2 years of actual work experience. Spent less than a year at a mid-sized content firm before joining us. She's been with us for 9 months, I said absently. Correct, Vivian replied. And yet in that time she's been assigned to 3 high-level content campaigns. One of which had a budget approved directly by Adrian. I turned the page. That campaign was originally assigned to my team. Vivian hesitated. Exactly. I leaned back in my chair. My office at Woo Media had always been simple. No personal photos. No unnecessary clutter. I liked my desk clear, my mind clearer. I thought you said there was no official promotion record for her. There isn't, she replied. That's what's odd. She's being treated like senior staff, but her status on paper hasn't changed. She's technically still a junior-level producer. And yet, I murmured, she's everywhere. Vivian didn't speak. He didn't have to. I want to see her access logs, I said, tapping my pen against the table. Every time she's badged into Adrian's office. Especially after hours. Vivian gave a tight nod. Already requested them from IT. Should have it before noon. As she left, I closed the file gently and stared at the name on the front. Tang Jasmin. Pretty face. Pleasant manner. Empty resume. But somehow fast-tracked into my husband's inner circle. It wasn't the lie that angered me. It was the laziness of it. If you're going to cheat, at least be smart about it. By mid-afternoon, I had the access logs. Vivian placed them in front of me like evidence in a courtroom. A printed spreadsheet, each line stamped with time and location. Cross-referenced with Adrian's calendar, she said. You'll see the pattern. And I did. Jasmin Tang. Access 31st Floor Executive Office. 9:27 p.m., Monday. 10:43 p.m., Wednesday. 11:01 p.m., Friday. All days Adrian claimed to be working late. No exit time logged until nearly midnight, I noted. Sometimes after, Vivian added. And once she came out wearing different shoes. My eyes lifted. What? There's security footage, she said, tapping her tablet. You want to see it? I gave a single nod. Vivian handed it over. I hit play. The footage was silent and grainy, just enough detail to be clear. Jasmin entered Adrian's office confidently, coat in hand. The timestamp read 9:23 p.m. Fast forward. She emerged 2.5 hours later, hair slightly messy, lips darker like she'd reapplied lipstick. Different shoes. Flats, not heels. I paused the video. My reflection shimmered faintly over the screen. Not a single word had been spoken between us about her since the gala. Adrian hadn't mentioned her name. And I hadn't asked. Because I didn't need to. That night he came home earlier than usual. We were in the kitchen. I was slicing fruit. He was leaning against the counter, scrolling his phone. "How was your day?" he asked absently. "Productive," I said. "Yours?" Long, he yawned. "We had a strategy meeting with the advertising team. Jasmin's team was presenting. You remember Jasmin, right?" My hand paused mid-slice. Kept my voice even. "Of course. She's just a colleague." He laughed lightly, not picking up the ice beneath my words. "She's young. Still learning. But smart." "So I've heard." Adrian put his phone down. "You're not seriously still thinking about that gala moment, are you? Am I supposed to have forgotten it?" He gave me a look, part amused, part exasperated. "Leah, you're overthinking. She's just eager. All these new hires want to impress us. You're reading too much into things." I turned to face him fully. "No," I said calmly. "Reading too much into things would involve paranoia. Suspecting you of things I couldn't prove." I stepped toward him. "But I have your security logs. Her badge swipes. The footage of her leaving your office at midnight. Wearing different shoes." His face went still. That beautiful, polished expression of his, the one he used in press interviews and boardrooms, froze just a second too long. "Leah." "I'm not overthinking, Adrian," I said softly. "If I were, you'd already be out of this house." He exhaled, eyes flicking away. "You really had security pull logs? For a staffer?" "No," I said. "For my husband." That was the end of the conversation. He didn't apologize. Didn't explain. He simply nodded once and went upstairs. And I very quietly opened my laptop and began going through our joint investment accounts. Not to check balances, but to separate names. 2 days later, Jasmin walked past me in the corridor at Woo Media. She smiled brightly, a coffee cup in hand. "VP Sue," she chirped. "Morning." I looked up from my tablet, offered her a nod. She walked off, ponytail swinging behind her like nothing had happened. Vivian stepped beside me a moment later. "She's getting bolder." "They always do," I said. "Did Adrian say anything?" He tried to deny. Then stayed quiet. "Are you going to confront her?" "No," I replied. "Let her think I'm being quiet because I'm weak." Vivian gave me a long look. "I know better." "So do you think she's stupid?" "No. I think she's 24 and still believes being liked by the boss is a plan." I almost smiled. Then I whispered, "Make sure our marital assets are fully cataloged and secured. Nothing missing. Nothing mixed." Vivian's eyes darkened. "I'll have our family office begin the audit. And transfer the Shin Fund board rights back to my father. Temporarily." "You're not waiting for confirmation?" "Vivian," I said, "confirmation is for those who need permission. I already know." That evening I stayed late at the office. The staff had gone home. The lights were dim. The only sound was the soft clicking of my fingers on the keyboard as I reviewed contracts. I had the security footage playing on loop in the corner of my screen. No audio. Just visuals. Jasmin walking in. Jasmin laughing by Adrian's door. Jasmin brushing something off her shoulder while his hand lingered longer than necessary. Over and over again. Until the flicker of amusement in her expression slowly twisted into something else. Entitlement. And Adrian, that man had stopped being sharp. He was predictable now. The same moves, the same detachment, the same smug belief that I would never walk away. He thought I didn't have the strength. He forgot who built the house he was cheating in. I closed the laptop softly and stared into the darkness. The rage wasn't explosive. It wasn't loud. It was slow. Burning. Precise. And it was just beginning. Anniversaries were never a big deal between Adrian and me. We were always those people. The couple who shrugged off gifts and roses with the excuse of being too busy, too practical, too grown up. But that year I decided to plan something. Not because I was sentimental. Because I needed answers. And I didn't trust the ones he gave me. So I made a reservation at a quiet French bistro we both liked. Nothing flashy. No public scene. Just a table for two at 8 p.m. But I never sent him the details. Instead, I packed the calla lilies he'd sent me the first year we were married, changed into a long black coat and drove to his private penthouse. The one under his name, the one I hadn't stepped foot in for almost a year. I didn't tell him I was coming. I wanted to see what surprise he had planned. The doorman recognized me instantly. "Good evening, Mrs. Wu," he said with a polite nod as he held the elevator open. "Haven't seen you in a while." I returned the gesture. "Thought I'd drop in on my husband. For our anniversary." He smiled faintly and said nothing more. When the elevator doors opened at the top floor, I stepped out into quiet luxury, dark wood glass and the faint scent of sandalwood lingering in the air. The lights were already on. The fireplace crackled softly. Everything looked lived in. And then I saw her. She walked into the hallway barefoot, sipping from one of my custom porcelain teacups. The ones I had shipped from Kyoto 2 years ago. Her hair was damp. Her robe, my robe, cinched tightly around her waist. For a moment she didn't see me. And then she did. Her body jerked slightly. The cup almost slipped from her hand. I said nothing. I simply closed the front door behind me and placed the bouquet of calla lilies gently on the console. "VP Sue," she stammered. I didn't expect you to be here." "I'm sure you didn't," I said calmly. She blinked as if trying to calculate how much trouble she was in. Her cheeks flushed pink, but she didn't lower her gaze. She simply set the cup down on a nearby table. "It's not what you think," she said quickly. "Adrian said you weren't coming home tonight. That you were away on business. So you made yourself at home?" She pressed her lips together. "I took a shower because I spilled coffee on myself earlier." The robe was hanging by the door. I walked past her and glanced toward the kitchen. A half-eaten fruit platter. 2 wine glasses. 1 open bottle of Merlot, Adrian's favorite. "Next time," I said softly, "ask the host before using his wife's robe." Her face went pale. Just then the butler appeared, an older man in a tailored vest, wide-eyed and tense. "Ma'am, I didn't know you were coming. Mr. Wu didn't mention." "It's fine," I said, cutting him off with a small smile. "Would you kindly help Miss Tang gather her belongings? And make sure she leaves fully clothed?" His nod was frantic. "Yes, of course." Jasmin looked between us, disbelief widening her eyes. "This isn't, you're misunderstanding." "I'm not. But I didn't mean to." I looked at her fully now, my expression flat, voice low. "If you had even half the intelligence you pretend to, you would have left the moment he didn't stop you from wearing what belonged to someone else." Her lips trembled. "He said you weren't." "I know what he said," I said coldly. "But I'm not here to scold you, Jasmin. You're not the one who took vows." She opened her mouth again, but I was done talking. Instead, I turned to the butler once more. "Please walk her out. I'll wait in the foyer." I heard her sniffling as she followed him into the hallway, bare feet padding against the marble floor. I stood alone near the glass wall, watching the city lights glitter far below. It wasn't heartbreak I felt. It wasn't betrayal either. It was insult. And I don't tolerate insult. The elevator dinged 5 minutes later. Adrian walked in briskly, phone in one hand, keys in the other. He looked surprised to see me, not guilty, not caught. Just surprised. "Leah," he said, stopping mid-step. "You're here." "Happy anniversary," I said, still facing the window. He walked toward me slowly. "You should have told me you were coming. I wanted to surprise you." He reached to kiss my cheek. I stepped back. "I see you already had company." He blinked. "Leah, I can explain." "You don't need to." She spilled coffee. "So, I was going to send her home before I arrived?" I turned to him, eyes sharp. "Before your wife showed up to the home she decorated with the teacups she bought, to find another woman lounging in her robe?" "Leah." "I've known for weeks, Adrian," I said. "I know she's in your office after hours. I know she's used your driver. I know she's been staying here." He stepped forward. "Nothing happened between us." "Nothing physical?" I asked. "That's your defense?" He hesitated. "Yes." "Then what happened, Adrian?" I asked, voice soft but deadly. "Did you enjoy being needed? Worshipped? Did it feel good having someone giggle at your jokes again?" "I didn't plan this," he muttered. "No," I said. "You just let it happen." He dragged a hand through his hair. Leah, don't do this. Not tonight. Not like this. I'm not doing anything. I reached for my handbag. You are. And then I walked past him. Where are you going? He asked, following. I stopped at the elevator. You can sleep wherever you want, I said quietly. Just not beside me. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. He didn't follow. He just stood there, frozen in the warm, expensive space he'd filled with lies and red wine. As I stepped inside and pressed the ground floor button, I heard him call out my name. But I didn't look back. The next morning I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even confront him again. Instead, I woke up at 6, brewed a black coffee in silence, and emailed the Shin Fund's legal team to initiate the separation of joint business interests. Then I called Vivian. Have the driver ready in 1 hour, I said. I'm moving to the apartment. She didn't ask which apartment. He knew. The one I kept under my name. The one Adrian always said was a waste of money. A backup plan. I suppose now it wasn't such a waste. I packed lightly. Just the essentials. My work files. My mother's jade ring. A few of my favorite dresses. The rest could stay. This wasn't a dramatic exit. I wasn't running away. I was simply leaving. Like shutting down a computer at the end of a workday. Vivian met me downstairs. Everything ready? She asked. I nodded. Did the staff see Adrian this morning? They said he left early. No message. Of course he did. I climbed into the car and didn't look back. Adrian called 6 times by noon. I didn't answer. He texted. Where are you? Can we talk? Leah. Please. Don't do this. I blocked his number by lunchtime. I didn't need to do this the messy way. I had too much self-respect for that. And yet, when I arrived at Wu Media that afternoon, there she was. Jasmin Tang, all glossy hair and smug eyes, strutting past the main elevator like she had just signed the building lease herself. VP Sue, she sang when she saw me. Welcome back. She flashed a saccharine smile, eyes scanning me up and down. Did you have a good night? I said nothing. My heels clicked softly against the marble floor as I walked past her. I didn't even turn my head. Guess you're not in the mood, she muttered as I disappeared into the executive wing. Vivian waited at my office door. Want me to? No, I interrupted. Let her pretend she won. At 3 p.m. I called for an emergency board meeting. The directors arrived within the hour. No one questioned the timing. They rarely did when it was me. Adrian hadn't arrived yet. I made sure of that. I stood at the head of the long glass table and waited until the last of them took their seats. Gentlemen. Ladies. I appreciate your time today, I began. No small talk. No smile. I've decided to take a sabbatical. Effective immediately. There was a beat of stunned silence. One of the senior members leaned forward. Pardon, VP Sue? 3 months, I clarified. I will retain board authority, but I'll be stepping away from day-to-day operations. May I ask why? Another asked, confused. If this is personal, surely we can delegate your... I held up a hand. This isn't a request, I said. It's an announcement. They looked at each other. Vivian, seated silently beside me, passed out copies of my temporary withdrawal agreement. The CFO cleared his throat. But with respect, Leah, without your oversight, Adrian's team will manage, I said. And if they don't? I allowed myself a faint smile. Then we'll see exactly what happens when the spine is gone. Adrian stormed into my office 2 hours later. What the hell was that? He demanded. I didn't look up. You're late. I was in a client meeting. You couldn't wait. I've waited for weeks, I replied. He shut the door behind him. A sabbatical? You blindsided the board. You could have. I don't owe you an explanation, I said flatly. Not anymore. He exhaled sharply, running both hands through his hair. This is overkill, Leah. No, I said, finally looking up. What happened in that penthouse was overkill. Me leaving is restraint. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. I'm your wife, he said quietly. You're just giving up? No, I replied. I'm just stepping back and letting the consequences play out. And what about Jasmin? It got him. He flinched. This isn't about her. Then make sure she understands that. Because from the way she's strutting around this building, she seems to think she owns it now. Come on, Leah. No, I said. You come on, Adrian. You let her wear my robe, sip from my cup, and now she walks these halls like she's earned something. You want to know why I'm leaving? I stood slowly, calmly. Because I built this place. Quietly. Relentlessly. Brick by brick. And now it's filled with people who forget whose hands made the foundation. He didn't say a word. Let them remember. I picked up my coat and my bag, turned toward the door. Where are you going now? To my real life, I said. The one I built before you. The one I'll return to without you. That night I returned to the apartment. My apartment, and unpacked everything one item at a time. No tears. No wine. Just silence. I took off my earrings, folded my dresses into the wardrobe, lined up my shoes. Hung my blazer on the chair by the window. I poured myself a glass of water and stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the city pulse beneath me. The apartment was smaller than the penthouse. Quieter. But it was mine. And in that moment, it felt more like home than anything Adrian had touched. The morning after I left Woo Media, the building felt the shift. Not outwardly. Not in the glossy walls or the automatic doors or the recycled boardroom coffee. But in the rhythm. The energy. I'd always kept things moving just slightly faster than crisis. That was the secret, not brute strength but precision. Timing. Knowing where the cracks might form before they splintered. Without me they started splintering fast. Vivian texted me on Tuesday morning. You were right. Jasmine's already trying to run the new campaign. It's a mess. I sipped my tea in silence. By Wednesday, 3 clients had pulled out of the holiday media package Jasmine had insisted on revising. She scrapped the original proposal, Vivian added in her next message. Said it felt too safe. Now it's edgy and unapproved. That afternoon my name trended on WeChat. Not because of me. Because someone had leaked 3 photos of Adrian and Jasmin. 2 outside a restaurant, 1 walking into a hotel. The captions weren't subtle. CO Wu seen again with rumored assistant-turned-mistress. Mrs. Wu absent from company functions. Leadership crisis brewing? I didn't post a word. Didn't respond. But I watched. By Friday, internal tensions had reached a boil. Vivian called, her voice low and crisp. It's chaos. Reporters. Camped outside the front entrance. Shareholders are demanding a closed-door meeting with Adrian. I didn't answer. I was watching a glass of ice melt on my windowsill. He asked for you, Vivian added. At the emergency briefing. I smiled faintly. Of course he did. I said you were unavailable. You're very good at your job. I learned from the best. Inside Woo Media, Jasmin tried to pretend nothing was wrong. She walked the halls in stiletto heels and designer coats, offering cheerful greetings to staff who now whispered behind her back. She held Adrian's arm at internal presentations, gave feedback in meetings where she wasn't on the invite list. Too safe, she'd say. Leah would have wanted something bolder. Someone finally muttered. Leah also knew how to proofread. The new campaign was riddled with errors. Layout issues, outdated stats, even the wrong time zone on a virtual event. By the time clients began requesting direct communication with Leah instead, Jasmin panicked. She walked into Adrian's office mid-call, eyes wide and watery. They're ignoring me, she said, dropping her phone on the table. The team doesn't respect me. Adrian didn't look up. You're not their manager. But you said. I said I'd let you sit in. They think I'm some joke, she hissed. Your little pet. Adrian sighed and stood. You've been too visible. Jasmin blinked. I was just trying to help. You should have stayed quiet. Her lip trembled. Are you embarrassed of me now? Adrian rubbed his temples. Jasmin, you're not. Then what am I? She snapped. Because I'm not your wife. And I'm certainly not your VP. Adrian's silence answered for him. The next morning an anonymous blog post went viral. Sleeping your way to the executive floor. A Woo Media Insider's account. The writer didn't name Jasmin. They didn't have to. Screenshots of internal Slack messages. A blurry elevator photo. Jasmin in Adrian's office at midnight. All watermarked. All time-stamped. The company's PR team scrambled. I didn't need to ask who leaked it. I already knew. 2 years ago, I'd helped a junior PR intern when a department head tried to block her promotion after rejecting his advances. I had quietly reassigned him and shielded her record. She owed me. And she just repaid the debt in full. Adrian called that night. Private number. I declined. Then he called Vivian. Vivian texted me. He says he's losing control. Wants to meet. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my calendar and marked a quiet note for the following Monday. Boardroom sweep. 10 a.m. Time to remind the building who held the real power. Back at the office, Jasmin tried damage control. She summoned the content team for a brainstorming session. Only 2 showed up. The rest claimed conflicting schedules. She posted an Instagram story of herself smiling in Adrian's office with the caption, "Boss mode briefcase sparkles." It backfired immediately. The comments flooded in. "This you?" Backhand index pointing down. Linked to gossip blog. Imagine getting a company sued in heels. Can someone find Leah Sue? She deleted the post in under 10 minutes. Too late. By end of day, 2 of Woo Media's oldest clients had requested meetings. Not with Adrian but with me. Vivian forwarded the emails. They said, and I quote, "We want the woman who got us through the pandemic." I stared at the message for a moment. Not because I was surprised, but because I realized something. I hadn't done any of this. I hadn't leaked the photos. I hadn't planted the stories. I hadn't said a word. I had simply left. And in doing so, I'd created a vacuum so vast it was pulling the entire company off its axis. Funny how that works. That evening, Adrian sat in his office alone. The city lights behind him. A half-empty bottle of scotch beside him. Jasmin standing in front of his desk, crying. "Just say it," she whispered. "Say you don't want me around anymore." He looked tired. More than tired, hollow. "You were never supposed to be around," he said softly. Her eyes widened. "You knew that," he added. "From the beginning." Jasmin's face crumpled. "But I thought you." Adrian stood and turned toward the window. "I thought a lot of things too." It had been years since I'd seen Elliot Fong. 10 to be exact. The last time we spoke we were both barely out of graduate school. Him on a fellowship to London, me on a plane to Hong Kong with an offer in my inbox and a fire in my gut. We left things without regret. Just distance. But now, as I sat across from him in a quiet cafe tucked behind a bookstore in Suhui, I couldn't remember why we'd ever lost touch. "Still drink your coffee black?" he asked, pushing my cup toward me with that small, unreadable smile of his. "Always." He leaned back in his chair, fingers lightly tracing the edge of his saucer. "Look, sharper. But not older. Flatter me again and I'll suspect you want something." "I do," he said without missing a beat. "To catch up." I studied him. His hair was shorter now, a touch of gray at the temples. His posture hadn't changed, still relaxed, confident without being cocky. "What brings you back to Shanghai?" "Investment project," he replied. "Looking to open a cultural innovation fund. Film, media, digital art. My team's scouting long-term opportunities." I nodded. "Sounds like something you'd build." His gaze lingered on me. "And Woo Media. Looks like something you built." My mouth curved slightly. "It used to be." He sipped his espresso. "Word is the company's unraveling without you." I raised an eyebrow. "That's flattering." "Untrue but flattering." "No, it's true," he said quietly. "I've heard the boards shaken. Clients talking. And your name keeps coming up." I didn't respond. Elliot leaned forward slightly, voice gentle. "I came back to see what's left of the woman who used to outthink everyone in the room." "And?" I asked, amused. He smiled. "Turns out she's still here. Just watching from a better seat." We talked for almost an hour. No drama. No tension. Just the kind of conversation that hummed with quiet understanding. Something I hadn't felt in years. "I'm not asking you to let me back into your life," he said as we stood to leave. "But if you ever need a partner, strategic or otherwise, you know where to find me." I slipped on my sunglasses. "I'll keep that in mind." He held the door open, let me walk out first. It wasn't romance. Not yet. But it felt like something solid. Something safe. And these days, safety was rare currency. The photo hit the news cycle that evening. A clean, well-lit shot. Me and Elliot seated at the cafe window, leaning in slightly, coffee between us, both smiling. Caption read: Leah Sue's next move. Mystery man spotted with former VP amid Woo Media turmoil. Vivian texted me 2 seconds after it posted. Tell me you wore that trench coat on purpose. I replied, of course. They always photograph the trench. Adrian of course saw it too. He showed up at my office before noon the next day. No appointment. He burst through the door like a man with nowhere left to go. You really want to do this? He snapped, throwing the phone on my desk. The screen showed the same photo. Me. Elliot. Coffee. Do what? I asked coolly, not looking at the image. Parade around the city with your ex like some tabloid headline? I closed the contract folder I'd been reviewing. First of all, we had coffee. Second, it's none of your business. You think this is professional? He asked, voice rising. What message does that send, to the board, to our clients? I stood. I didn't ask you when you brought a 24-year-old into our company, I said, voice low and even. I didn't ask when she started staying at your penthouse. And I didn't ask when she started acting like she owned Woo Media. I stepped around the desk and faced him. So don't expect me to answer now. Adrian stared at me, eyes dark, chest rising fast. You're really not coming back, he said softly. I gave a small smile. I left the door unlocked. You're the one who bolted it. He looked like he wanted to say more. But he didn't. He turned and walked out, shutting the door harder than necessary. Vivian stepped in moments later. Should I have him blocked? Not yet, I said. Let him see what happens when the door stays closed. She hesitated, then asked, and Elliot? I smiled faintly. Let him in. Woo Media's flagship campaign launch was supposed to be a spectacle. A glamorous hybrid event, live-streamed across 6 platforms, attended by celebrity ambassadors, filled with press, light shows and headline-worthy reveals. It ended in total collapse. A missing keynote slide. An unrehearsed spokesperson. A client's logo printed upside down on branded material. And worst of all, the viral video clip that surfaced just hours after the event. Jasmin, mic still live, whispering on stage to another staffer. Honestly? This product is trash, but the lighting's great, so just smile. By the next morning, 3 major sponsors had pulled out. One released a statement. This is not the standard of professionalism we expect from Woo Media. The press was ruthless. From power couple to PR chaos. Can Woo Media survive without Leah Sue? When the visionary leaves, what's left? Has the queen of strategy abandoned her throne? I hadn't. Not yet. But I was done watching from afar. I arrived at the building just after 10 a.m. No announcement. No entourage. Just me in a charcoal suit, heels muted against the marble floor, sunglasses still on. The receptionist did a double take. Then stood. VP Sue. No need to notify anyone, I said calmly. I know the way. Whispers started as I passed the open-plan workstations. Heads turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Some tried to pretend they were working. Others just stared outright. By the time I reached the executive floor, Vivian was already waiting. You're early, she said with a satisfied smile. It's time. I've notified the legal team. They're ready. Good. Have security stand by. Vivian's eyes lit up. God, I missed this. In the boardroom, the atmosphere was tense. Adrian sat at the head of the table, arms folded, jaw tight. The directors looked exhausted. No one greeted me, but no one objected when I sat. I'm calling this meeting, I said, under Section 4.2 of the Board Emergency Clause, when a brand crisis affects active shareholder equity. One director cleared his throat. What exactly are we voting on, VP Sue? We're not voting, I said coolly. I'm informing you. I placed a manila folder on the table. Vivian handed out copies. Inside, a legally notarized clause from our company's bylaws, one Adrian had overlooked. It outlined the rules regarding probationary hires appointed under executive privilege. It stated in plain text that such hires do not require board involvement for termination. And Jasmin was never formally transitioned out of probation. She was listed under Adrian's discretionary executive appointments, I said. No HR confirmation. No conversion paperwork. She's been a visitor with a badge. Nothing more. Adrian's eyes widened. That's not possible, she's been running. Running things she was never authorized to touch, I interrupted. All of it invalid. Legally speaking, she's not even entitled to an employee discount, let alone a title. One of the directors chuckled under his breath. Vivian glanced down at her watch. It's 11:13, she said. The office is at peak occupancy. I turned to security, already waiting by the door. Escort Miss Tang out of the premises. Revoke her badge. Collect any company devices. Adrian stood abruptly. You can't just. Yes, I said, rising to my feet. I can. And what am I supposed to tell the staff? He demanded. I paused. Tell them their spine came back. The walk from the boardroom to the executive floor was surreal. Staff lined the corridors pretending not to look. But they were watching. And in the center of the open floor, Jasmin stood at her desk, phone in hand, eyes darting nervously at the two uniformed officers approaching. Her voice trembled. What's going on? Miss Tang, one said. You've been instructed to vacate the premises. She laughed in disbelief. I work here. No, Vivian said, stepping beside me. You loitered here. You can't do this. Jasmin turned toward Adrian, desperation in her eyes. Tell them I'm still. Adrian said nothing. He stared at the floor, shoulders tight, refusing to look at her. Jasmin's voice cracked. You said I belonged here. Vivian stepped forward. He says a lot of things. Doesn't mean any of them are true. One of the junior staff near the corner desk stifled a laugh. Someone else applauded once, quietly. Jasmin's face crumpled. And then, as security gently guided her away, she did the only thing she knew how to do. She turned to me. You ruined everything. No, I replied. I simply stopped letting you take what wasn't yours. She said nothing else. The elevator doors closed behind her. The room exhaled. Vivian looked at me, eyes gleaming. Looks like the spine just walked back in. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. Because Wu Media remembered who I was, and who I still am. And from that moment on, no one mistook me for absent again. When Jasmin Tang was escorted out of Wu Media's headquarters, she didn't go quietly into the night. He went to war. And like most amateurs, she chose the loudest weapon first. By noon the next day, gossip sites were flooded. Screenshots of private messages. Cropped photos of Adrian and me at events, where I looked serious and he looked distracted. Old staff group chats pulled out of context. Jasmin had edited everything. Made herself look like a bright, overworked assistant drowning under the weight of an obsessive boss's wife. One headline read, Exclusive. Leah Sue's jealous rage, former intern speaks out on toxic control, at Wu Media. Another. I was just trying to do my job, how the CEO's wife silenced me. She painted herself as the underdog. The victim. The innocent who dared to succeed and got punished for it. Some believed her. For about 5 hours. At 3:42 p.m., a reputable business outlet published an exposé titled, The Real Story Behind the Jasmin Tang Scandal, and the Powerhouse Who Quietly Burned It Down. I didn't write it. But I handed them everything. Surveillance footage of Jasmin entering Adrian's office after hours. Company car logs. Expense reports she had no business filing. Internal communications. Even a private email she'd sent to a fashion brand, listing her role as VP of Wu Media, and trying to claim a sponsorship gift. I sent it all to one person. Lillian Ching, a former investigative journalist I once helped protect during a defamation lawsuit years ago. She owed me. She delivered. Her article was factual, clinical, devastating. By the end of the piece, Jasmin Tang wasn't a victim. She was a fraud. And the public knew it. Within 24 hours. 4 sponsors retracted their association with Jasmin. Her personal Instagram went dark. An ex-employee from her last firm came forward anonymously, sharing records of her habit of cozying up to executives for promotions. The comments under her old interviews turned savage. So this is what failing upward looks like. Shame Wu Media let her near a press deck. Give us back Leah Sue. And just like that, Jasmin's glass tower shattered. Inside Wu Media, Adrian was unraveling fast. The board had stopped replying to his emails. The finance team forwarded contract requests directly to me. Clients refused to schedule pitch meetings unless I was in the room. His influence bled out day by day, not through confrontation but silence. Exactly the way I planned it. Vivian peeked into my office on Friday. He's still here. Where? Boardroom. Alone. For the last hour. I looked up. Media still outside? 3 camera vans, 2 reporters and 1 particularly aggressive podcast host. I stood, smoothed down my blouse and collected my folder for the next meeting. Let him enjoy the quiet while it lasts. As I walked past the boardroom, the door was cracked open. Adrian sat at the head of the table, suit wrinkled, hair a mess, a tablet in his hands, scanning the latest news about himself. Outside, flashbulbs clicked through the glass. He didn't notice me. But I noticed everything. The way his hand trembled slightly. The untouched coffee next to him. The way the world was caving in and he had no idea how to hold it up without me. I kept walking. Didn't slow. Didn't glance twice. Let him feel what absence really meant. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the single pearl at my ear. No diamonds. No gold. No wedding band. Just a slate gray pantsuit, a tucked blouse and a clear voice prepared for the end. Vivian appeared behind me holding a small black folder. Legal team confirmed the final draft, she said. Press briefing is in 45. I nodded once. Let's not delay. As we walked toward the elevator, she added quietly, "Are you sure you want to do it this way?" "Yes," I said. "No drama. Just truth." The Woo Media press room was packed. Not because of a product launch. Not because of a scandal. But because of a calendar event titled simply, Personal Statement, Leah Sue. I stepped up to the podium, adjusted the mic and looked out into the sea of cameras, journalists, bloggers and executives. For a moment, silence blanketed the room. Then I began. "Good morning. I appreciate you all taking time to attend. I'll be brief and clear. For the last 8 years I've been known publicly not just as the co-founder of Woo Media, but as Mrs. Leah Sue, wife to Adrian Woo. That chapter has closed. Effective today I have filed for divorce." Gasps flickered like embers in the crowd. I continued, unflinching. "This is not a statement of failure nor one of blame. It is simply clarity. The woman I am today no longer fits beside the man I once stood with. There are no courtroom theatrics. No accusations. No countersuits. There is only truth. Quiet and unwavering. I have retained full ownership of my personal assets and holdings. Woo Media remains intact with board oversight ensured. And I remain." I let the silence settle again. Then finished. "This chapter has ended. Not with regret but with clarity. That will be all." The press didn't ask questions. They didn't need to. The cameras clicked like rain. And within an hour the world knew. Headlines broke across every outlet. Leah Sue breaks her silence, with grace and power. No regrets, just clarity. The divorce speech that silenced the internet. From betrayal to brilliance, how Leah Sue walked away on her own terms. Social media erupted. Hashtag Leah Sue trended for 12 hours. Journalists called it the new blueprint for public dignity. Women across industries reposted the clip, quoting, "This chapter has ended, not with regret but with clarity." I said nothing more. I didn't need to. Adrian watched the live stream alone in his office. The lights were off. His phone had stopped buzzing an hour ago. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just stared. Because there was nothing left to say. And this time, everyone could see who had built the empire, and who had merely stood beside it. Later that night he called me. Vivian held out the phone. "It's him." I didn't even look up. "Decline." She nodded and slipped it into her coat. I stood by the window of my apartment holding the final set of documents in one hand. The divorce papers were neat. Simple. I signed them without hesitation. Then I took off my wedding ring, cool, golden, still polished, and placed it gently into a small drawer by my desk. It clicked shut with a sound that felt more final than anything I had spoken today. I walked to the window. The skyline of Shanghai stretched before me, wide, shimmering, mine. And I knew with certainty that nothing that came next would ever again begin with someone else's name. Took 6 months. 6 months to clear the debris. 6 months to let the smoke die down. 6 months to steady my breath and take the next one without flinching. Woo Media didn't collapse. It didn't need to. It evolved. The chaos faded. The gossip quieted. Shareholder confidence returned. I didn't take the CEO title. I didn't need to. Influence doesn't always need a plaque. Sometimes it's just the way a room holds its breath when you enter. And now, in late spring, I stood on a rooftop surrounded by glass and gentle conversation, a flute of sparkling water in my hand, watching the city I rebuilt reflect back the woman I had become. "Still prefer no ice in your water?" a voice asked behind me. I turned, already knowing who it was. Elliot Fong. He wore dark navy, no tie, hair still too neat for a Friday night. He handed me a glass and stepped beside me. "Funny," I said. "You still remember." "I remember a lot." We stood in silence for a moment, letting the warm air settle between us. "I heard your speech," he said after a while. "Every word." I didn't reply. "I didn't reach out then," he added. "Didn't want to be another voice in a sea of noise." "That was smart," I said. He glanced at me. "I've always been more patient than dramatic. And I've always been more composed than forgiving." He smiled. "So we're even." We walked along the edge of the terrace, past hosts and funders in quiet admiration. "Are you happy?" he asked. The question didn't sting. It didn't feel invasive. It just felt like someone who saw me clearly. I thought for a moment. "I'm not always happy," I said. "But I'm finally peaceful." He nodded. "That's rarer," he replied. "And more important." The night stretched on. He didn't touch me. Didn't push. Didn't speak of futures or regrets. He simply existed beside me. And then, as we prepared to leave, he said quietly, "I'm heading to the Azores next week. No press, no pressure. Just a quiet week by the ocean." I blinked. "It's not an invitation to run away," he added. "Just a chance to pause. With someone who knows when to be still." I stared at him, surprised. Then I laughed softly. "That's the least chaotic offer I've had in years." "So?" I didn't give him a dramatic yes. I just smiled. "I'll think about it." 3 days later, I stood at the airport. No entourage. No headlines. No wedding ring. Just a dark suitcase, a passport freshly renewed, and a boarding pass with my name on it. Just my name. Elliot waited a few feet ahead at the gate, hands in his pockets, gaze steady. This wasn't a love story. Not yet. This was the space before a beginning. The pause before the music. The inhale before the leap. And for once, it wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about survival. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was just about me. Choosing. To flee. Finally. And this time on my terms. The end.